In CIST 1530, Chapter 7, we'll look at investigating production tricks and techniques. The first thing we're going to talk about is image resolution. So, all digital images are bitmap graphics, and all bitmap graphics are composed of pixels. Now, the word pixel is derived from the words picture and element. So, you can think of a bitmap image as being a grid of thousands of pixels. If you zoom in on your images, you will see that in here you will see the individual pixels that make up your image. Now, the resolution, that's the term it's going to refer to the number of pixels per inch in a digital image. So, for example, if we have a 1 inch by 1 inch Photoshop file, it has a resolution of 100 pixels per inch. The file is going to contain a total of 10,000 pixels. Now, our image size, if you go to image and come to image size, you'll see the image size dialog box. Now, this box will allow us to adjust the size of our image, the width and the height, and also the resolution. Now, keep in mind that the image size is going to refer to the dimensions of the Photoshop file. It's not going to be dependent on the resolution. So, in other words, you can have two 3-inch by 5-inch files, one that would be at 72 pixels per inch and the other at 300 pixels per inch. They're going to have the same image size, but different resolutions. Now, image size is related to resolutions because anytime you modify a file's image size, that's going to have a direct effect on its resolution. So if I create this image and at 300 resolution, it's going to not have that much of distortion. If I have an image that has a lower resolution, let's set this one, say, to 72. And then I adjust the image size. We're going to set it 10 width. You see that it does start becoming distorted. So if we have this at, say, 600 resolution, and then adjust the image size, you're going to have a better quality image when you zoom in on it, as it will not lose that much quality because the images are going to be, your resolution is going to have more pixels per inch. So when you change the size or the resolution, as we just did, the captured data, keep this in mind, the captured data in your digital image on your camera, those pixels, that image on your data, that's the data that your camera captures. So Photoshop can also create new pixels based on a process called interpolation. What it does is it uses the captured data as its source and then creates new pixels based on that data. Next, we'll look at cropping an image. If you come over to your tools, you'll see you have the crop tool. Once you select that, you will have a bounding box that will be placed around your image. You can draw any of these handles in, and it will readjust your image. So in this case, I have just cropped this image to remove any unnecessary imagery from my main image. You can also use the straighten tool to straighten an image or to readjust the orientation. And once you've cropped your image, you can reposition this. So this will be my new image here. So using the straightening tool, I'll draw a line. You'll notice that it does give the crop tool. Okay, those can be adjusted. I'm just going to orient it to the left side. So looking back at this, you'll see that this picture is crooked. So if I want to straighten this one up, I can use the correct tool, click straighten. I draw my line, and it's going to orient my line to the left margin to straighten the image. You can also perform a task on multiple items at once. For example, the image processor. This could take a folder full of PSD files and convert them into TIFFs um, or JPEGs or both and put them in a new folder. So we're going to look at the folder here I have in my data files. I have an automation folder that has the following 7 Photoshop files. So if I want to convert these over to a JPEGs, so what I will do is I will come up to File and down to Scripts and to Image Processor. Now in the Image Processor dialog box, I can use the Open Images, or I can select a folder. I can also choose the location to save these images, the file type I want to save them as, and also the quality, for example, in JPEGs. So in this case, I'm going to select the folder, and I'm going to select the automation folder. I'm going to choose a new folder here, so I'm going to click select folder. It's still inside of the automation folder. I am going to name this new folder a JPEG. And I'm going to select that folder. I'm going to leave them as JPEG, quality at 5. And then I'm going to click Run. So what Photoshop will do, it'll open up each one of these files and go through the process of open the file and then saving it as a JPEG. So now we look in our automation folder. We have our JPEG folder here. And then we have our files have been converted over. So the same thing too, if I have a lot of files or JPEG that I want to save as Photoshop files, I can do that in reverse as well. Go to Scripts, Image Processor. Once again, I can select the folder. In this case, I'm going to select the JPEG folder. I'm going to name the new one PSD files or PSD. And I want to make sure that I save them only as PSDs. So I'm going to run this again. I go through the process. It's going to save those files as PSD files. As it's going through the process now, so we have those files saved. So the image processor allows you to take multiple files and apply and change the format at one time. The next thing we're going to look at is the action panel. So if I come to Window and come down to Actions. Now Actions, in the action panel, this gives me a lot of predefined steps. Each one of these actions is called a step that it goes through. So it makes a snapshot, stops, convert mode. And each one of these is it's going through a different step. They're called action steps. So going through these actions, I can run these actions to quickly apply these to an image. For example, if I wanted to apply wood frame to this image, I would select the wood frame and come down to the play button. Click continue. Photoshop is running through the process of adding a wooden frame to this image. As you see, it has added the wooden frame around the border of the image. So to make it easier to do the repetitive steps sequence, you can use the action panel. You can also use this to record your action steps. So once they're recorded, you never have to go through these steps again. You can just simply run that action. You can come in and click the plus sign give the action a name, click record, and at that point, it'll start recording the steps that you are doing to your image. Then you would hit the stop button to stop the recording. You can then apply that repetitive steps to other images. The batch dialog box, if you come back to File and to Automate and Batch. So in the batch dialog box, this allows you to apply actions to multiple images. This can be applied to folders, files. So if we look back at our JPEGs that we created in our automation, so we see that they're just normal graphics, marble, bricks, so forth. So if we want to add this wood frame to those, we can come in, well, we can choose individual files or import files. I'm going to choose the folder. Then we have some options here that we can choose. We have a way to stop this. So in here, I have a destination that I can apply this to. So I'm going to choose a new folder. I'm going to place it inside the JPEG folder. And I'm just going to name it batch. So I'm going to click OK. And it's going to give me those messages each time coming through this. It's going to give me the save as options. So I'm just canceling the save. But it would go into the JPEG batch folder where I told it to go. But as you see, I can apply this step to multiple images by using the batch option. Now, the history panel, when I look at it, you'll see that different items have been added to this. The history panel we've looked at in the past. The history panel shows you the actions that have been applied to the image. It also allows me to jump back in time to a specific place. And then any changes I make from that point on changes my history going forward. So all of this history here would be deleted and changed along the new path. You also notice that the snapshot has been applied up here. Now, the history panel allows you to take the snapshot of your project at any given state. That's a record of the project at that moment. And you can choose when to take a snapshot by clicking the camera icon on the bottom of the tool. Now, I'm going to draw some paint lines on this eagle to demonstrate the history brush tool. Now, this is used for restoring part of your artwork back to what it was at an earlier stage of the project. So you can think of this history brush tool as a production tool rather than a creative tool. So I can use this history brush tool or let's do it on this guy. So I can use the history brush tool. As you see, I'm restoring this back to the way it was at that point in time, pixel by pixel. You see that I have this been added into my action panel. You can also use your fill option with history. When you execute this fill, the selected pixels will revert back to what they were when the image was last saved. So for example, if I make a selection, come to edit and fill, choose history, click OK, it's going to revert that back to how it was the last time this image was saved. Last one we talk about is the camera raw. This is a digital image that hasn't been compressed or otherwise processed. So when you set your digital cameras to capture data in camera raw, the digital file that you download from your camera is close to the actual image that was captured as possible. The camera raw file is not reduced by any compression algorithms. Now, even though you may have a larger file size, a lot of photographers prefer to shoot in camera raw because they want the image to be as pure as possible and close to as natural as it was when it was taken. Also, many workers may prefer to work in the camera raw utility rather than Photoshop. This utility offers many image adjustment controls that may look familiar to you from Photoshop, but it also has controls that you've not seen in Photoshop, such as temperature, tint, clarity, and dehaze. So this wraps up chapter 7 as we've investigated different production tricks and techniques. We've talked about our image size and image resolutions, changing the size and the resolution, how to crop images and straighten images with the straighten tool. We've looked at doing action steps, repetitive steps that we can repeat with the click of a button. We've also looked at the image processor to changing files from one format to the another, and also the batch dialog box, where we can apply multiple actions or an action to multiple files at once. We've also looked at camera raw and the history panel and the history brush tool.